Let's begin with a bit of meditation. Welcome to everyone on Facebook Live, and also on Zoom. So those of you from Zoom, hello. Those of you from Facebook Live. Oh, sitting back in the comfort of your sense of home. Your feet gently on the ground, flat. Your hands in your lap, perhaps your palms facing up, to allow for acceptance. Breathing gently, slowly, sweetly. Gently, slowly, sweetly breathing. Breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. Closing your eyes in deep comfort. Breathing in wholeness and breathing out peace. Breathing in, breathing out. Allowing yourself to embrace that deep comfort, that wisdom of love. Focusing sweetly on that unity, that indestructible quality of omniscience, of our source and our Creator. Feeling, sensing, and embracing that one consciousness that flows through all who are participating in this meditation process, all over the world. resting vibrantly and aware of the energy, that consciousness that flows through all that is. Including our body temple, expressing as our body temple. Experiencing and expressing that sense of community, that sense of wholeness that is celebrated right now and right here in this meditation practice. Breathing in, wholeness, and breathing out, truth. Breathing in delight and breathing out love. Allowing your awareness to return into this present moment, allowing your consciousness to celebrate this time together. We'll begin service in just a second.
Well, good evening, everyone out there in cyberspace. So glad that you are able to join us this evening, that we can still remain connected in this way. Just a few things to let you know before we begin the service. We continue to look at all the ways we can remain connected with you via the internet, any way possible while we are honoring the social distancing and the stay-at-home guidelines. So we were able to conduct our foundations class this Monday night, and for the first time we worked with the assigning people to chat rooms so they could be with their pod leaders. We're looking to use that technology soon to be able to allow for you to connect with practitioners after the service and have prayer one-on-one with practitioners. That's still in the works. All of our on-site events are postponed at this time, but we will continue to remain committed to staying connected with you and providing you with the spiritual support that we're here to provide you with. And with that, again, thank you for joining us. And I now invite wonderful Mary and Sam to lead us in our opening chant.
God is in this place. God is in this place. God is in this holy place. God is in this place. Love is in this place. Love is in this place. Love is in this holy place. Love is in this place. Joy is in this place. Joy is in this place. Joy is in this holy place. Joy is in this place. God is in this place.
Good evening. Let's take this moment to go within for an opening prayer. Our invocation of love and peace and wholeness and connection. As I stand here in celebration, I bring my awareness, I bring our awareness to that idea of the perfect eternal peace, that perfect eternal wholeness that I call God. I know in this indestructible eternalness, this God is everywhere present in every time, on every plane of existence. Sparked into existence by its own love, its own desire, its divine urge that exists in all of us. And so I speak this word for the divine urge of community and sanctuary that we celebrate here tonight. This time is absolutely blessed. As this word reaches out into the universe, that sense of togetherness, that sense of community, that sense of holding one another in our own awareness, gently embracing, delights and uplifts. And I speak this word for this time and for all of us here together, recognizing that God is in this place, and this place is as infinite as God is. I know that everyone here is blessed. Everyone taking part in this sanctuary and this celebration is blessed. I absolutely know that that handful of folks that are here to help make this service reach out into the world are blessed, Our music is blessed, Sam and Mary. And I know most particularly that our beloved Reverend Marc is blessed, and that the word he speaks is not just a series of eloquent English words, but the word of truth, the word of life, the word of love, the word of wholeness and connection, absolutely celebrating that truth that is ever present despite appearances. And because of all that is, sweetly unfolding, I give great thanks for this time, for this word, for this celebration. And I release this word knowing that that first cause responds perfectly, magically, miraculously. And so it is. And together we say, Amen. So as we continue this conscious awareness of the love, the peace, the joy that is ever present, bring your awareness into your consciousness, the consciousness for meditation. bring your awareness. Embracing this meditation, bring your awareness and open your eyes as we continue with this sacred service. Please join in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.
Thank you so much, Mary. So, my topic this evening is, where's God in this? Probably a question a lot of people have been asking themselves lately. When major challenges, crises, calamities, especially those that involve a large number of people and they unfold on a large scale, it's not at all unusual for people to question the very existence of God. I think anyone who subscribes to any spiritual tradition that believes in God as a higher power, that is loving, that is powerful, is probably confronted with this question periodically, like, how can you say there's a God that's all loving when these sort of things are happening? There are those, I think, who abandon their faiths, whatever traditions they're in, including ours, based on the fact that they can't reconcile this idea of an all-loving God and yet these really, really challenging, painful situations, the human suffering that is unfolding in the world. And in Science of Mind, for those of us who follow metaphysical branches also of all the world religions that, like us, agree to this idea that God isn't this being outside of us. God is actually present in everything and everyone, that everything is created out of God, and that God's nature is fully and equally present in all beings, in all situations. We emphatically state that God's nature is everywhere. And so we get confronted with the question, even from those who believe in God, maybe as a being outside of us, it's like, how can you say that God is in this? How can you say that God is actually present in the middle of these situations? And as followers of these traditions that teach that God is in everything and everyone, we might wrestle with this question ourselves. We might be asking ourselves, how can I believe that God's goodness is in everything and everyone while witnessing so much pain, so much fear? And I think the first thing that those of us who try to be there to answer that question try to explain is that, we believe that God's infinite goodness exists as a potential in everything and everyone. But God's nature is not fully and equally expressed in all situations. There is a potential to be expressed, but it might not be in full expression. That nature of God is experienced and expressed to the degree that we individually and collectively sense our oneness with God. The more we do, the more we absolutely feel that goodness of God in ourselves, the more we sense it as a potential in everything and everyone, then we are able to bring goodness into every situation. We're able to experience more goodness. As we bring goodness into the world, we experience goodness. And I think as we really work with this, we start to realize that, yes, as I sense that goodness of God in me, there are ways, there are limiting beliefs that I've held up until now that have prevented me maybe from creating greater good, co-creating with that universal energy to create that kind of loving relationship I've been wanting, to step into that career that I was looking for myself, to experience greater health, greater well-being, greater financial prosperity, whatever. When I clear my beliefs and limitation, I'm able to actually manifest more good in my life. But the other level of our teaching is that even when we're not manifesting the good that we perceive we would like to have, or even when we find ourselves confronted with situations that are painful and challenging, we can still experience God's nature. And that's a little bit more difficult to accept. Reverend Patrick Harbula, who was our guest speaker this last Sunday, spoke about this idea of the possibility for us to manifest all kinds of good, but also to be at peace in what might be labeled as negative situations, not being dependent on the world out there as our source of good. So in situations like this pandemic that our world is facing right now, we can look for the good. We can look for the God potential that's coming out of this situation, that is being expressed in the midst of this situation. Through that, we can gain a greater sense of God still being there, an underlying potential of good being at the center of everything, even if it's not being realized fully in this moment. We can gain a greater sense of a goodness in us that's going to help us move through the situation. It gives us a sense that ultimately good prevails, and that gives us a greater sense of hope and optimism. And of course, that to me is extremely comforting. That idea that I can see so much good even right now in the midst of it, of what's happening, that brings me back to center, that helps me to have that sense of the divine at the center of my being, at the center of the situations we're looking at. When I look right now at all the ways that love, collaboration, creativity, adapting to change, that all those things are happening, ways that I can still connect with others, no matter what the circumstances, ways that I can experience and express humor and laugh at different situations that people bring to my attention that are humorous, that I can feel compassion and love no matter what's happening, that's absolutely moving, that's absolutely inspiring. And I think I'm heartened too to see that now that we have social media and so many people that are able to communicate, how many people are reflecting on this idea in the public media of the good that's present in the midst of these circumstances, and the good that we can bring forth out of this situation, the good that may come out of all of this. And I'd like to share some of those observations in a bit, but before going there, before going to the place of, oh, let's look at all the good, I also want to look at how God is in the middle of the challenges, of the suffering, of the fear, of the discouragement. And I'm not saying that God's core nature is any of those things, but I'm saying that God is still there in the midst of those things. Let's start with looking at this question that may look like someone who is challenging or questioning their faith, someone that is feeling doubt, someone that is maybe feeling angry and let down by their faith tradition when they're asking, where's God in this? Or how can you believe in God? You know, whether that question is asked purely out of curiosity or disdain, despair, frustration, whatever, there's still an underlying impulse for understanding. Behind that question, there's still something that's trying to come forth to understand, to find a way to see this and deal with it constructively, to not feel victimized by it. Even for those who, out of this question, reject the idea of God, based on how they've perceived God up until now. Somehow, this doesn't match up anymore. And they're saying, well, that idea of God doesn't sit well with me. They're still trying to find a belief system, a way of seeing things that makes sense, that can help them have some sense of peace in how to cope with the situation at hand. The doubt, the questioning, causes us to go deeper, to try to understand the nature of life, the nature of things, why we're here. What is this that's going on right now? How do we deal with it? It's driven by the impulse of God for greater knowingness, for a greater experience of itself through us. For those who follow this teaching or other teaching, I would want to say it's not bad to question. If you're feeling, if I was really committed to this faith, I wouldn't have these questions. Do not berate yourself if you're asking that question, where is God in this? If it's coming up as something that you're struggling with. We teach in this tradition that God's nature is infinite. And we are finite expressions of the infinite. We, as finite beings, can never conceive the totality of the infinite. So there will always be some deeper level, some greater way to know God, to experience God. And so our questions just help us to come to that greater knowing, that greater understanding that works for us. And so I really feel that's driven by the impulse of God, for it to have a greater realization of itself and understanding and knowing itself more fully through us. So please don't feel badly at all if you're questioning your faith. Instead, recognize it as a way to honor God's impulse in you to know itself, to know its nature more deeply through you, to reveal more of what it is and the goodness that it is no matter what. Look at ways that religions have evolved to being more accepting of one another through people questioning the dogma that said, my way's the only way. I can talk about how we as a denomination have evolved as we've asked questions about what we really believe. When I first came into this tradition, we were just starting to go in the direction of, it's not all about manifesting things in the world. There are deeper ways to know God. I know when I first came in, I would hear from practitioners in this tradition that when they went to practitioner class, they didn't dare show up, or they really tried to conceal the fact that they might have a cold or some kind of physical challenge, because that meant that they were not working with the law of the universe well enough, that somehow that reflected poorly on them. That's not very loving. If we're in a denomination, we're making people feel bad for bad, negative circumstances in their lives. That's not very loving. I am really happy that we questioned that part of our teaching and evolved beyond that. Also, as we talk a lot about the good that's emerging right now. So there is, I'm sure I know you've heard it from the pulpit here, but you've heard about the good that we can witness, how all of a sudden families are coming together. People are realizing, what's really important and resetting their priorities. People are finding time to read and do things that, they kept saying they didn't have time for before. So there's good unfolding in the midst of all of these challenges. But I don't want anyone out there to feel badly if they're hearing about, oh, people are coming together and there's so much love, and yet maybe they are in a situation where they are having to, isolate with members of their family, and there isn't necessarily a lot of harmony, that there are personality conflicts going on. God is still at the center of that. I received a video clip. I don't know how many people have seen it, but it's a close-up of this man, and he's listening, and you hear a voice saying, because of coronavirus, you are going to be quarantined, but you have a choice. Do you, A, quarantine with your wife and child, or B, and before they even say what B is, he just immediately responds, B. I'm sure there are many who are feeling stressed with family members whose personalities, whose behavioral patterns aren't patterns that they deal with very easily. So in the middle of this, there are probably some people hearing about all the good and going, oh, why aren't I feeling good? I'm feeling lonely. I'm feeling isolated. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm not feeling bliss in this quiet time like some others are talking about, wow, I finally have time to read or whatever. And I would just say, God is there as the impulse to find the way to live in greater harmony. We've been doing a lot on texting and finding ways to not connect for a long time. I'm not surprised that we're having more, not that we didn't have challenges before in getting along, but now that we might have even more challenges sometimes. So that's just something in us that's saying, time to learn how to look at things in a way to look beyond our personality differences, our ideological differences, or whatever. God is the impulse that we're feeling for greater harmony, to find a way to experience what's going on in a way that is more pleasant. It's trying, there's some part of God that we're being called to know more deeply. Behind every negative, painful feeling or experience is an impulse to feel better. Think of any time you have felt some kind of pain, some kind of challenge, and something in you has wanted to feel better. That was the impulse of God. That's how God was there, even in the middle of that situation. There's some part of God that's trying to birth itself to become more fully realized and felt and known through you. So please, don't berate yourself for the moments you're in doubt. Don't berate yourself for the moments that you're feeling fear or frustration or discouragement. It's just a reminder to yourself. It's a reminder to know, okay, this is my opportunity to know, to experience, and to express some aspect of God's nature to a greater degree. So with that, I don't want to end on the note of just struggling. Let's also talk about the good that we see coming forth, how God really is at the center of what's unfolding. Even if it isn't being felt or fully realized in every moment by everyone, there is a lot of good that's unfolding right in the midst of this situation. We have reports from China that the air quality is just improving tremendously. I'm sure our environment, with fewer people being out and about, fewer flights, fewer, the fuel not being used as much, that around the globe we're going to see some improvements in the environment. Look at the ways that families are putting aside their differences. I've heard from people that in the midst of this situation, suddenly family members who haven't spoken to each other for a long time are realizing, really? We thought that that issue was so important. Now that we're faced with any one of us could possibly not be on this planet much longer, that they're putting aside their differences and finding ways to come together. My partner Joe was mentioning a colleague who was sharing on a teleconference call recently that in this time, for the first time ever as a family, her family, the parents and the kids, have sat down together at the dining table for a meal. Of course, they had a dining table, but I guess you used it to sit and read the newspaper. I don't know, but they had not done that before. And I'm sure that's not that unusual. And suddenly people are finding ways to reconnect and to just simply take pleasure out of each other's company. There are so many spiritual discussions going on out there in social media, and I love that you've got people from all walks of life looking for the deeper meaning occurring. It's, it isn't reserved for those of us who are in, professions where we talk about spirituality, we talk about God. I don't know how many people have seen the post that was made by Bill Gates, but I really felt I had to share some of the ideas that he shared about how good is or how good is coming out of this situation. One of the first things he said is that he firmly believes that there's a spiritual purpose behind everything that happens. And I won't read everything, but these are the key points. So I invite you to please, at some point, go on the internet and see in more detail what he shared. But he talks about, behind all of this, it reminds us that we're all equal. This is happening to all of us, no matter what our status in life, famous or completely, unknown by the general public. No matter what our religious traditions, our political affiliations, our gender, our nationalities, our age, we're all being affected by this. The virus isn't discriminating, and we get to see how we're all pretty much equal. It also teaches how we're all connected, that what happens in one part of the globe really does affect us all. Maybe we'll open up to, if it's not happening behind my boundaries, I don't have to be concerned about it. It's teaching us how precious our health is and to take care of us, It's teaching us about the shortness of life and the importance of helping one another. How materialistic we've become. And that really maybe we should focus on the essentials. It's teaching us how important our family and home life is. It's teaching us that our true work isn't our job. Our job is something that we do, but our real work is about being a benefit to one another. It's teaching us that our free will is in our hands, that we can be selfish and hoard, or we can be kind, generous, and help. It's teaching us to be patient rather than to panic. And that this can be an end or the beginning of a greater era, depending on how we choose to look at it. And it's also teaching us to take care of our planet. And that after every difficulty, there's always ease. That at some point, this too shall pass. And we can ask ourselves, so what have we learned from it? And he finishes by saying, instead of thinking of this as the great disaster, maybe we should think of it as the great corrector. Now, corrector might sound a little bit punitive, but if we look at this as God at the center, showing us where we might have lost our sense of connection, or we never awakened to that sense of our connection with its goodness. And it's just a call to awaken. It's calling us to open to the ways that its goodness can help us to correct, to make good of the situation at hand and any of the challenges that we face as a human race. So I invite us to take that idea into consciousness and to turn our awareness inward. And I'm going to ask you briefly to contemplate a few things. And then I encourage you, if you find it helpful, to contemplate these things periodically as part of your spiritual practice. So the first is to call to mind positive actions others have taken in response to this pandemic that you've witnessed personally or through the news or social media. Just bring your awareness to those positive actions that have taken place. And know that these actions were God's nature being expressed. God at the center of all these beings, these situations, being called forth into expression. And then call to mind positive actions that you've taken, ways you've adapted, ways you've been able to comfort, support, show love and kindness to others. And know that these actions were God's nature in you being expressed. That was God in you being expressed. And then call to mind ways that you've experienced fear or discomfort, ways that you've seen others act out of a place of fear or pain or separation. And remind yourself that behind your discomfort, behind ways that others were acting out of pain or separation, there was an impulse of God for greater love, for greater peace, for greater joy. It was maybe misguided, but there was something. There's something in that was seeking a greater good. So you can know that God was still at the center of those situations. And so I invite you to set your intention right now, since everything begins with an intention, to release any sense of God not being present in and around us throughout all our human experiences. Just release any sense of God not being there. Be willing to do that. And follow that up by setting an intention to embrace a greater sense of God's ever-presence in all situations, in all circumstances, and us just opening to it being more fully revealed through and around us. And knowing we can always bring our awareness back to this place, I invite you to bring your attention back into the room, or back to center here in the sanctuary as our beloved Mary comes forward to lead us in the chant that she wrote.
I am divinely guided, step by step, moment by moment, breath by breath. I am divinely guided, step by step, moment by moment, breath by breath. I am divinely guided.
So please join us in prayer. As we turn our attention inward, just feeling that calling from within for love, for joy, for wholeness, for abundance, for every form of well-being to be experienced and expressed, for it to be outpictured in our lives. And to recognize that as an impulse that is felt. It's a vibration that is felt throughout creation, because it is the impulse of the one life, the one true power, the one infinite invisible that I call God, out of which all creation comes into being. I know that I exist as an emanation of this life of God. And as that's true of me, I know this is the truth about each and every being, all of us who are joined together through the internet, and how we are joined together with all other beings everywhere. I know that we are all one with the nature of God. We all live within the one nature of God, and that nature lives through each and every one of us, always.
And that nature of God, which lives through each and every one of us always, is eternal and absolutely unchangeable. It is the rock, the solid foundation, that spirit of life, that spirit of truth, that spirit of love, constantly unfolding, indestructible, pliable, sweet, but always true, ever present, expressing in that perfect nature of God as God expresses as each and every one of us, each and every being everywhere, in that natural unflow, that natural unfolding of the beautiful, sweet sky. That is God, that is spirit, that is life.
And I know that that life of the divine is perfect. It is absolutely perfect, whole, and complete. There is a pattern of perfection, of well-being at the center of everything and everyone. And so I know that any experience of dis-ease or discord is a temporary experience that comes out of the unknowingness, the sense of separation from that wholeness of the divine that lives in each and every one of us. And I know as we declare right here, right now, that God, perfection, wholeness, health, well-being, is the true nature of everything and everyone, that nature of health and vitality comes into greater expression, is a healing presence that transmutes anything that looks like dis-ease or discord into perfect well-being.
And that perfect well-being is a revealing of the truth that is, that creative expression of God that is wholeness, delight, unfolding perfectly in that creative urge, that divine urge for creativity to create itself over and over again in one unified awareness. This creative expression, expressing in our relationships, in our work, in our chosen careers, in our day-to-day experience with one another, this creativity, and now is such a creative moment in our awareness. Each idea of the creativity is another spark of God taking place. Each expression of wholeness is another spark of God taking place. And that creative expression is whole, perfect, and complete.
And I absolutely know that that nature is also infinite. There is no lack or limitation in God. That again, it is the human mind, the free will that allows us to think that we are not one with the infinite source of all good, that creates experiences of lack and limitation. But as that we now turn within and recognize, look at the abundance of life unfolding, even in the midst of all that is happening. Look at the number of blades of grass that are growing, the galaxies, it's incomprehensible to the human mind, the vastness. the absolute abundance of Spirit. But as we open to it right now, where we are experiencing any sense of lack or limitation, that it's transformed into us being part of the flow, the inflow and the outflow, that infinite giver-receiver of the universe is more fully expressed through us in our capacity to give and receive love, and where we're feeling any lack or fear around the financial situation, we know that in the source there's a way for all to be provided for, and we open to that, and we rest in that, so that that consciousness may prevail, and that lack and limitation may be dissolved, for they are only temporary human experiences.
And we feel that sense of abundance in our relationships, that sense of now, that presence in our loving relationships. As in all relationships, there is that infinite spark of love. Each relationship is divinely authorized and absolutely blessed. That love is ever present. Love is encircling the world. Love is creating the world. The world is unfolding as love. Love, neighbor speaking to neighbor, reaching out to neighbor and embracing. Congregant to congregant, loved one to loved one, family member to family member, stranger to stranger, reaching out in that perfect way to experience and express that sense of love, that sense of, I'm here too. I'm so grateful to see you. So grateful for that awareness that expresses as each and every one of us, that gift that we give, that image and likeness of God that we give in love.
And I know that the impulse of love is always for good. And so let's honor the impulse of the divine now as we set our intentions for greater good, right here, right now, in the silence. And absolutely knowing that each of these intentions is fueled by the love, the light, the goodness of God. It is that impulse that is saying, let there be, and some greater good comes into expression. As we know that God is at the center of each and every one of these situations for which we have set our intentions, that good is revealed, for that is the nature of God that is constant. And together we declare, I accept these truths for myself and all beings everywhere.
We bless our church. We bless all churches everywhere. Synagogues, temples, mosques, ashrams, all paths to God, knowing that all paths lead us to the same truth.
And I absolutely am so grateful to the presence of God, to know this truth, to know that God is always at the center of all that is. I say, thank you, God, thank you, life, thank you, love, and I release this word knowing it is so. I let it be, and so it is. Together we say, Amen.
I release and I let go. I let the Spirit run my life, and my heart is open wide. Yes, I'm only here for God. No more struggle, no more strife. With my faith I see the light. I am free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here for God. I release and I let go. I let the Spirit run my life, and my heart is open wide. Yes, I'm only here for God. No more struggle, no more strife. With my faith I see the light. I am free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here for God. Yes, I'm only here for God. Yes, I'm only here for God.
So this is a time in our service for affirmative giving. We always like to give with that sense of everything that we are sharing came to us from that infinite source, and we get to enact its nature by giving back. And so the ways that you can support us and give to this community is you should be seeing a link right now that would allow you to make your donation online. If the link isn't showing up, or if you're having a problem with that, it's simply www.nhcrs.org/give. That's pretty simple. So we appreciate anything you're able to give that way. You're still welcome, of course, to send in checks if you prefer to donate in that manner. And we will be available for 30 minutes after the service if you would prefer to call in and give a donation via a debit or credit card. We can take that information from you over the phone up till 8:30. So we thank you. Thank you so much for anything that you are able to share with us in your tithes.
Blessed always, for the arms of God surround us. Let our joy be so triumphant that we rest in God and say amen. Blessed always, for the arms of God surround us. Let our joy be so triumphant that we rest in God and say amen. Let our joy be so triumphant that we rest in God and say amen. Rest in God and say amen.
Well, once again, we want to say thank you so much for joining us this evening as we bring our service to a close. We used to always come through the sanctuary at this time and collect prayer requests. Please know that you can submit your prayer requests online via email to prayer@nhcrs.org. So just email prayer@nhcrs.org. Or you may call the church number, 818-762-7566, and you'll hear an option for Ministry of Prayer. Just press that, and I believe it's option 4, and you can leave a voicemail, and we will pick those up every evening. So you will be supported in prayer by all of our practitioners. Couple of announcements. So next week, we hope you'll be able to join us again for service via Zoom or Facebook Live. And my topic will be honoring our feelings. Our grief support group will be led by practitioner Carol Winokur online again. That will be this coming Sunday, the 29th, via Zoom. That's at 1 p.m. All are welcome. If you go to our website, you can follow the link on the website to join that meeting, the grief support meeting. And we invite you to stay informed and up to date with us through our weekly e-blasts. If you're receiving those, you can sign up online or call in if you need information on how to get that. We send out a monthly newsletter, and you can get information on that at nhcrs.org. And we also have practitioners who are able to pray with you over the phone. There's a practitioner list on our website, again, nhcrs.org. You'll have memorized it by the time the service is over. And you can absolutely try calling and getting prayer from practitioners. And we'll be available, as I said, for 30 minutes after service to answer your calls if you want to make donations online. It is the last Wednesday of the month, and we normally have people stand up, but we know there are people out there. This was your birthday. We love to honor your birthday, so please stand up wherever you are. That's right.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear everyone who's having a birthday. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you once again for being here. I want to say thank you to Adam, who's been so wonderful, making sure we were seen and heard up here. Thank you to Alex Thompson, who has helped us with the Zoom, as well as Dean, who's been the jack of all trades, the dean of all trades, helping with the Zoom meeting and being up here on platform. Mary, thank you so much for the beautiful music, and Sam, of course, as always. And to Melissa, Ellen out there, and to all the folks who are helping us to stay connected with you via cyberspace. So grateful that we can still be together in this way. Let's join together one last time for prayer. One last time for this evening. And so as we turn our attention inward, once again, how grateful I am. How absolutely grateful I am for the ways that that magnificent spirit of love, that indestructible essence of the divine, has made itself felt and known through our time together. How we've been able to feel connected, even though we were not physically connected in the same space this evening. I could feel the vibration. I know that it's God that we have felt. I know we have felt it in the desire to come together and know a greater truth. I know we've been inspired by it through our music this evening, through Sam and Mary. And I know we felt it in the prayers, in the silence. And I know as we've come to look at this idea of where's God in this, we have a greater sense of the divine at the center of every situation that we encounter in our human journey. And I know we carry that into our lives. It continues to bless us. It ripples out into the world. We all uplift each other because it's God working through us to do so. I'm so grateful for that presence of the divine. I once again say thank you.